Hello and welcome to the week one edition of the Bleacher Report Fantasy Football Show. My name is Adam Levitan of EstablishTheRun.com, as always, joined by Michael Leone of EstablishTheRun.com. Football is upon us, Michael, after a long summer of never leaving the house, drafting, listening to coach press conferences. In just 4 short hours, we will have actual NFL football. How are you feeling today, Michael?
I like this summer when I can pretend I'm going to be right about everything, and then we get smacked with reality right away, day one.
Yes. If George Pickens does not have a good game tonight, you may never see me again. So we're hoping that George Pickens is able to have a good game tonight for the Cowboys. On today's show, we're going to be talking week one breakout candidates, not stars, but some guys a little bit further down the board, maybe some guys who were drafted in the middle rounds here this year that we think are in good spots for week one and are going to break out in week one. As always, we are men of the people. If you have questions, be a normal human. No psycho questions, no spamming the chat. But if you have a normal human question, you can put it in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can here over the next half hour. All right, Leonie, let's get into it here with our week one breakout candidates. I think the first one we're going to do is going to be a rookie wide receiver whose people are somewhat worried about the role, and that is Travis Hunter. Now, I should note that Travis Hunter was listed for what it's worth, not very much, as a first string wide receiver on the Jaguars depth chart and a backup corner. This is for the last, I don't know, month or so. This is kind of the way that I've thought of it, is that he is going to play more wide receiver than corner, and he's specifically going to play in the slot in three wide receiver sets, similar to kind of the way I thought that the Packers were set to use Jaden Reed this year before his injury. You can still rack up a ton of targets this way. And on top of that, Leone gets the matchup here home against the Panthers. So you get Liam Cohen's debut, you get a home game against the Panthers, and you also get some uncertainty about role here. It adds up to me for a sneaky good spot for Travis Hunter. How do you think about playing him right out of the gate in a season-long league?
Yeah, I think you can do it right out of the gate. And in some ways, because he's this crazy dual athlete that we haven't seen at the NFL level, I think sometimes that leads to his offense being undervalued. But if he was just a receiver, he would have been the first wide receiver taken in the NFL draft. So to be clear, he was the best wide receiver prospect in the class. It wasn't just because he was a wide receiver cornerback. And as you've alluded to, all indications the past month or so have been that offense is the primary focus. Defense is going to come along a little bit more slowly for him. So and this team needs it. If you look at that depth chart behind him, there are not a lot of target earners on it. I think even if Hunter loses a few snaps here and there to a full-time wide receiver, his targets per route run is going to make up for that. And he just might lose some empty routes or some blocking snaps out wide at wide receiver. So I really wouldn't overthink this one. You can play him right away.
Yeah, for sure. Panthers were horrific against the run last year, but I think that's just was a game plan thing. It's not like they're talented trying to defend the pass either. So really good spot here. Excited about seeing Liam Cohen and this Jaguars offense right out of the gate. Let's go to number two on our list here. If I can find it.
I think this
Uh,
is Kenneth Walker here.
Oh my God, it is. You knew we had to get Kenneth Walker in for Leone, the biggest Kenneth Walker fan on the internet. Now, Kenneth Walker missed a bunch of time in camp. I don't know, a bunch. He was on a maintenance schedule due to a foot thing. We are not think that's anything serious, just a maintenance schedule. And then you get the matchup here this week where Kenneth Walker, oh my God, sorry, Kenneth Walker gets a home game against the 49ers. And so the 49ers are relying on so many rookies on defense. Maybe their defense will end up being good this year, but I think out of the gate is an interesting time to attack them here. What do you think about the split between Walker and Charbonnet here in week one, Leone, and thoughts about this spot for Kenneth Walker?
Yeah, there were some rumblings about Charbonnet playing a bigger role when Walker was dealing with this foot soreness over camp, but it really seemed like that was mostly a maintenance thing for him. And At the end of the day, this is the back that they want to lean on. So even if Charbonnet mixes in here and there, it's going to be a heavy dose of Kenneth Walker. I think this offense is really built around the running back position. I think we could see an increase in targets for the running back position for Seattle, and I expect this ground game to be way more efficient for them than it was last year. And Kenneth Walker is one of those few game breakers in the NFL. He can score from distance. That's really what you want out there. And the San Francisco defense that you talked about, looking at our, advanced fantasy points per game DVP stuff from last year, they struggle against the running back position relative to teams' passing games. So I do think this is the right spot to attack. Also hoping for that Seattle defense to be pretty strong this
Yeah.
year, which should help them stay in some more neutral game scripts, get that rushing rate much higher than it was last season.
Yeah, and I mean the run scheme that Kubiak is installing here should be really good for Kenneth Walker. I think it was an upgrade for him in coaching here this season as well. I want to get to a few chats here, Leone. Jumanji85 says, would you start George Pickens over Travion Henderson or David Montgomery? I don't think it's the best like raw spot for George Pickens tonight. He's probably going to see a lot of Quinyon Mitchell. Eagles have a very disruptive pass rush, may not let George Pickens get down the field as much. So I don't love the spot for Pickens. You could play Travion Henderson home against the Raiders is an interesting one as well. Any thoughts on this decision here for Jumanji 85?
It's pretty close, but I think I'd lean on Pickens. Really excited to see what his big play upside does as a number two receiver in this Dallas offense in a spot where they're going to have to throw a whole ton. And then you look at the backs. Travion Henderson, very exciting. I think there's a lot of big play potential, but some role uncertainty out of the gate. And same for David Montgomery, with the team possibly leaning on Jahmyr Gibbs a bit more, and a tough road game where the Lions are actually underdogs in this one.
Yeah,
Doesn't shape up for the best spot for David Montgomery, despite how many fantasy points that team generally generates for their own running back position.
agreed. Teasum says, should I start Dak or Kyler this week? So Dak, of course, home against the Eagles here, while Kyler, the Cardinals are playing the Saints in the dome. Yeah. So Kyler, I believe we had ahead for almost the entire summer. This is a pretty good spot for Kyler here against the Saints. Still expecting a lot of volume for Dak in the game tonight, but like I said, it's not the greatest spot I've seen. What do you think about Dak or Kyler?
Yeah, I like Kyler. The team total for Arizona is like 5 points higher than it is for Dallas. And really, the quarterback position quite often comes down to rushing production and touchdowns. And that's what Kyler's going to give you and has the edge over Dak in those. The edge that Dak has is going to be pure pass volume, but that
Yeah.
doesn't move the needle as much as the rushing stuff and the TD upside for Kyler.
Falsey says, am I better off holding on to Charbonnet or picking up Braylon Allen? So I think both of those guys should be owned in most formats, but I would rather, if I could only hold one, it would be Charbonnet for me. We've heard a little bit more injury noise around Kenneth Walker. And I think, Charbonnet, as much as I like Braylon Allen, Charbonnet we know is like a 20 touch per game back anytime Kenneth Walker goes down. If Brees Hall were to go down, I could see Isaiah Davis playing some there as well. So I'll go with Charbonnet there. Frank the Tank says, what do you think about Matthew Golden this week? Yeah, I mean, we're pretty worried about Jaden Reed. Even if Jaden Reed's able to play in this game here against the Lions, I'm a little worried that Jaden Reed is not going to be 100%. Obviously, we know that Christian Watson is out also. And so I like the spot for Matthew Golden. I would not be shy about using Matthew Golden in your lineup right away here this week. All right. Get back to our list here for our third breakout candidate in week one. My God, one of the biggest risers that we've seen, not as big as Travion Henderson, but Emeka Egbuka went from like going in the 90s to going in the 40s before it was all said and done in some higher stakes draft stuff. No Godwin in this game, no Jalen McMillan in this game. Kate Otten has also been banged up. And so you get a spot where they have to rely on Emeka Egbuka right out of the gate, and they get to play the Falcons there. Falcons, I expect to have one of the worst pass rushes in the entire league. And so I'd be shocked if Emeka Egbuka didn't get 6, 7, 8 targets here in his first start. If I drafted Emeka Egbuka, I would be playing him here this week. Seems pretty straightforward to me. Leon, anything else to add here on Emeka Egbuka?
Yeah, he'll have that slot role all to himself out of the gate, was super productive spot for Chris Godwin last year in this offense. I think it'll be a similar offense even with Liam Cohen gone. And this matchup, dome game, Pat Thorman over at Established a Run for Us in his Snaps and Pace article has this as one of the three up and pace games of the week. So some shootout potential here. And with the condensed target share for Tampa Bay due to the injuries, really, I think it's a great floor ceiling spot. The upside is really strong for Ibuka.
Oh, baby. Okay. Number 4 on the list is another rookie receiver. We already talked about the Travis Hunter spot. What about the spot for Teteroa McMillan in his very first game? He gets to play the Jaguars, and like there is no role controversy whatsoever over Teteroa McMillan. Jalen Coker's out. I know they brought back Hunter Renfrow, but I'm not that high on Xavier Legette. And I do think that I think what Bryce showed down the stretch last season is the real Bryce Young. And what we saw before that was just horrific. So it seems like he's getting comfortable in the Dave Canales scheme late last year, all summer, preseason. I thought Bryce Young looked really good. And his number one target immediately is Teteroa McMillan. I mean, like we see on the screen here, there is no target competition whatsoever. So, man, I was taking Teteroa McMillan as high as like 35th, 38th in some tougher leagues down the stretch here. I'm starting him right away as well. Any more thoughts on Teteroa against the Jags, Leone?
Yeah, I mean, they trade Adam Thielen late in the offseason only to have Jalen Coker wind up on IR and having to bring back Hunter Renfrow to play slot. As you mentioned, there's just not really any target competition here. And I think Bryce, I'm a little bit worried about his efficiency long term, but I think he's going to complete a lot of passes, and a vast majority of those are going to go to McMillan. You notice a lot of rookies on this list for us because people sometimes are worried about starting rookies out of the gate, and there are going to be some rookies like Luther Burden for Chicago. They're going to have to grow into a role. It's not going to happen right away, but there's a few rookies where the offseason has just broken perfectly for them. Golden, Ibuka, Hunter, and now McMillan, that you don't have to wait to start them. You want that upside in your lineup right away.
Yeah. All right. We do have the final 3 names on the list are all veterans. Why don't we do one more here before we get to some more chats? Veteran at tight end, David Njoku. Now, this is a little bit of a reverse case where people are worried about Harold Fannin. They're like, Adam, don't you know Harold Fannin is the next superstar at the tight end position? The Browns are lacking talent so bad all over, and David Njoku is one of their most talented players. It is hard for me to see them taking David Njoku off the field. Like he's just like one of their best football players, period. I do not think that he's going to leave the field in favor of a round 3 pick. And then you also get this spot against the Bengals where it's really likely that the Browns are going to be trailing, and you have Joe Flacco back there who does not care. Joe Flacco will be aggressive. He'll throw down the field. He will target guys relentlessly. And so I like this spot for David Njoku, no matter how the game runs out for the Browns. So I think a bit of a breakout chance here for Njoku. Leone, any more thoughts on him?
Yeah, and you're going to want to play him when Flacco is at quarterback. He will chuck the ball. Uh, Later on in the season, if they go to one of the rookies, it could get a little bit more boring. They might run into play volume issues, but out of the gate, they're going to be willing to lean into a high pass rate, which they'll probably see as big dogs against Cincinnati. And it's a Cincinnati defense that's not good. It was absolutely atrocious last year. And this is another game, actually the top game in Pat Thorman's snaps and pace article in terms of up and pace. So I really think you want to take advantage of these Cleveland pass catchers early. If you're in leagues with trading, maybe you get a few good games out of Njoku and Judy out of the gate, and you can sell high on them, a few weeks in before they make a quarterback switch.
Yeah, and it's possible down the stretch, that they trade David Njoku and give the keys to the tight end room to Harold Fannin. But in the meantime, it's kind of a perfect storm for Njoku, like Leone said, with the matchup and the role, and then Flacco starting also. Let's go back to some chats here. Chris Fargo says, what do you think of Jamison Williams over Jerry Jeudy? Now, Math is going to like Jerry Jeudy a lot here this week for a lot of the reasons we just said. Projections are going to like Jerry Jeudy because we expect Joe Flacco to be slinging. We expect them to have a lot of volume, and there is not a lot of target competition for Njoku and Jerry Jeudy here. So Math is going to like them. My gut, though, Leone, is Jamison is just too good. He's just too good of a player for me to sit him down here for Jerry Jeudy. So my gut is Jamison. I know Leone is going to tell me that the math says Jerry Jeudy, though.
Yeah, the math does say Jerry Jeudy. I think we don't want to dismiss that Jerry Jeudy was a really highly drafted wide receiver that has very good pedigree, hasn't played with a lot of strong quarterbacks. If you look at what he was able to do when he has had competent quarterback play, it's pretty impressive. So this is the time to start Judy. Over the course of this season, I'm with you. I prefer Jamison Williams and the upside there. But while everyone's fully healthy for Detroit, I'm going to lean on the Joe Flacco number one wide receiver here in Jerry Judy.
Hollis Thompson. I wonder if that's the real Hollis Thompson. He used to play for the Sixers. I used to watch Hollis Thompson all the time. But Hollis Thompson says Aaron Jones or Jalen Waddle in the flex for full PPR. So Aaron Jones does profile well in full PPR. I do think he's going to lose short yardage and goal line to Jordan Mason this year. The other part of the Waddle thesis is like he benefits so much if any of Tyreek or Achan go down. And with all this stuff going around Tyreek, that's why I thought Waddle was an interesting pick in the middle rounds and season long. This is a close one, though, Leone. What do you think about Waddle or Aaron Jones this week in full PPR?
Yeah, it's really close. Our projections right now have it slightly favoring Aaron Jones, but I'm going to pull an Adam and just go with the player I've been drafting all offseason, which is Jalen Waddle. I think if you look at the pure ceiling here, his is better. We could see the target share between him and Tyreek Hill start to flatten out, tilt the way of Jalen Waddle, who's the younger player. And I think people because Jalen Waddle's had some bad runouts, whether it's due to injuries or just systemic stuff last year, dismiss the fact that he has a 100 catch season, he has a 1,300 yard season, he has another season where he's top 10 in the NFL in yards per route run at the wide receiver position. He's only played 4 NFL seasons, and those are 3 of his 4. So don't sleep on him. He's legitimately very, very talented. So I'm going to go with Waddle.
All right. All Martini says Big Bill. I assume he's really referring to Bill Krosky Merritt or Rashid Shaheed. Um, I don't know what's going to happen with Washington. I think you actually have to pay attention Sunday morning because one of their backs could be inactive. It could be Chris Rodriguez. It could be Bill Krosky Merritt. I don't think it's going to be Bill Krosky Merritt, but it could be. And then if they keep all four up, Eckler, Bill, McNichols, and Rodriguez, and then you have Jaden Daniels running also, it starts to get really tight. So my gut here is Shaheed, unless Chris Rodriguez ends up as a scratch on Sunday. Leon, any thoughts on this one, Krosky Merritt or Shaheed?
Yeah, same. I want to see the role on JCM first before playing him. It's not the most valuable of roles to begin with, just because you tend to get a lot of low value rushing touches in that Brian Robinson role. If he has it all to himself and he's really good, that's great. But we know Rashid Shaheed's an extremely efficient wide receiver. It seems like he's primed to play 80%, 90% of the snaps this year. I have some faith in Kellen Moore being able to design and generate some offense despite the inferior quarterback play for New Orleans. They're going to have to chuck as underdogs. So I like Shaheed a little bit better here out of the gate.
All right. Last chat before we get to back to the list here. SSW the Texan says, who has the higher ceiling, Jalen Knoll or Jaden Higgins? So we are expecting Christian Kirk to miss at least 2 weeks of this season. And therefore, you get questions like this. I think on the outside in two wide receiver sets, it'll be Jaden Higgins and Nico Collins. It could be some Xavier Hutchinson. And then in the slot, when they go to three wide receiver set, I think it should be Jalen Knoll, but it could be a little bit of Hutchinson there also. So there's some role uncertainty on Knoll. For that reason, I'll say Jaden Higgins for now, but I kind of still want to have Knoll. If I was in a deep league, I'd still want to kind of have him on my bench to kind of see how this plays out. Leone, thoughts on Texans wide receiver right now?
Yeah, agree in stashing Knoll in a deep league. If he ends up the full-time slot player out of the gate with Kirk hurt, that's awesome. And both these rookies now are going to get a chance to see the field and play, which opens up a runway for them they may not have had if Christian Kirk hadn't gotten injured. But I will say Jaden Higgins as well, because I think he's the one that's probably going to run the most routes and has the most upside in terms of being able to play in both 2 and 3 wide receiver sets.
All right. Let's get back to our list here. The top two we have for breakouts here in week one of the 2025 season. Number two is going to be someone from the Friday night game, Xavier Worthy. Chiefs are quietly thin. Rashee Rice is suspended here for this game. And then Travis Kelce I know this is the healthiest he'll be all year, but I'm not sure they want to extend his routes to be a full game player. And so you get Xavier Worthy as the alpha with Marquise Brown expected to have a pretty big role here as well. And so this time when Rashee Rice is suspended, this is the time where Xavier Worthy needs to put his stamp on being an elite wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes. I think it's a reasonable spot for him to do so on neutral field down there in Brazil. So yeah, Leone, any more thoughts here on Worthy?
I do think the Chiefs ran a little bit hot last year in terms of winning some of these tight games. Were they able to run the ball a bit more than they have in the past and lean on that more than they have in the past? I think they get back to their really pass happy ways. I think they find more ways to be successful down the field, something that's been taken out of their pass game somewhat the past couple of seasons. And Worthy is the main potential beneficiary there. He just missed on some deep plays last year in the regular season. If they get him with these short manufactured touches by the short area distance with Rashee Rice out, and they're able to give him some shots down the field, hopefully connect on one, that gives you the floor ceiling combo that you want.
All right. The number one breakout we have for the 2025 Week 1 season is going to surprise some people. Leone, it's not a rookie. It's not a receiver. It's an old running back. James Conner at the Saints here. Saints are completely devoid of talent. Cardinals have one of the best run schemes in the league. I think if you told me that James Conner was going to stay healthy for all 17 games, he would have been a fourth round pick, a third round pick. Everyone assumes he's going to break down, he's going to wear down. He hasn't shown any signs of that in recent years, still been one of the best running backs in the league. And so if the Cardinals are going to win this game, and I think that they expect to, considering the state of the Saints, you're going to see James Conner push towards 20, 25 touches here in week one against the Saints, and that is obviously worth a ton. So a breakout 30-year-old running back, Leone. Never thought we'd be here, but any more thoughts on James Conner?
This is my revenge. Adam and the team has been yelling at me for our high James Conner projection for years. I finally get him back here, but yeah, jokes aside, he was legitimately very good in a lot of the advanced rushing metrics in terms of tackles evaded and whatnot the past 2 seasons. This is a team that's shown they will really lean on him, especially when they get the positive game script, and that's what they should get against this really bad Saints team. So, and there's no reason for them to be, mixing in Trey Benson much this early in the season. We actually have Connor projected as a top 10 back on this week, even though he was not drafted as such in the offseason.
Yeah, and I do think Trey Benson can play, and I think they'll play him. The rhetoric all offseason has been James Conner's our workhorse. We're gonna ride James Conner. And I know there's been some, talk lately. That's not the case. I don't buy that. I think James Conner is going to be the 70, 75, 80% of the running back touches kind of guy. All right. A few more chats before we get out of here. Tyler says, do we think Travion Henderson is worth starting? I do. Even if the role isn't massive out of the gate, he's going to have the James White, Shane Vereen, Danny Woodhead type role. And then anything beyond that's kind of a bonus. Those guys were catching 5, 6, 7 balls a game. And so I still like starting Travion Henderson, especially in full PPR right out of the gate. And man, Ramondre Stevenson has had fumbling issues, not that efficient. It's not that crazy to think right out of the gate, Travion Henderson can get 8, 9 base carries in addition to 5 or 6 targets. So I like starting Travion Henderson right away here. Leone, how do you think about the split ahead of this game against the Raiders?
Yeah, still expecting, Ramondre to get most of the base work for them, but Henderson could get some of the high value touches in the passing game. I think they're going to have some stuff schemed up for him right away in week one. And given his big play potential and in a PPR league, the value of just getting 3, 4 catches, I think the upside's there. There might be players out there that project a little bit better than him, but this is the type of player where I think you take a small sacrifice in projection and hoping that you can hit that big time upside. You don't want to be looking a week from now when Travion Henderson out projects, your other option by 6 points and realize you didn't start him the week before because it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah. D. Dawson says Jordan Mason or Dylan Sampson. So I already mentioned that I thought Jordan Mason is going to have the goal line role for the Vikings. Browns will not have Quinshon Judkins for this game, so it's going to be mostly Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson. Just on like team talent, odds to score touchdown, my gut on this is Jordan Mason. I understand that you want to start Samson before Judkins gets back, though, if he gets back at any point. So, Leonie, what do you think about Jordan Mason versus Dylan Sampson Sunday?
Yeah, I think Mason's the safer play, even though he's the RB2 there. Like we really know what his role is going to be. They're going to try and run a little bit more out of the gate. They got Addison suspended. As you mentioned, he's probably going to be the short yardage back for a pretty good offense. I think he's the safer option. Probably would start him. There is some upside in Samson though if this game gets a little bit nutty and Cleveland's playing from behind and chucking a lot. I think Samson has some upside in the receiving department and that's this type of game flow. So there's just a lot more uncertainty in terms of what his role will be. Is he going to be splitting with Jerome Ford or is Jerome Ford going to absolutely dust him in touches? We really have no idea. We're much more confident in Mason's role in Minnesota.
Yeah. And Minnesota, for the record, has one of the league's best offensive lines, one of the league's best defenses. And there's been some talk that they're going to go run heavier than they have in the past, given all this. Um, so I think it's a pretty good setup for Jordan Mason overall. B. Flores says, what about Cedric Tillman? Yeah, we didn't mention Cedric Tillman. We talked about Judy. We talked about Njoku. We talked about Samson. And by the way, I'll say this, Leone, just on an early look, the Joe Flacco doubles are simming quite well in DFS here for this week. And you could certainly include Cedric Tillman in there. I thought before those scary concussions last year, Cedric Tillman played some really good games for them. It's hard to give him a ton of targets, given Njoku, given Fannin, given Sampson in the receiving role, given Jerry Judy. But I do think Cedric Tillman can get there on like 6 targets from Joe Flacco. Any thoughts on Tillman here for Sunday?
Yeah, and well, I think it was a little bit fluky last year before he got hurt. He had a stretch of games where he had 12 targets, 9 targets, 11 targets, 8 targets. And this is what can happen when you're in this offense and playing from behind. And there were times in DFS we were playing Cedric Tillman at the same price over Jerry Judy last year. I think that was some short-term bias, and I think it's right that we have this big gap between Judy and Tillman, but it's at least worth noting, on the variance of these things that less than a year ago, when these two were playing and sharing the field together, we had them very similarly projected.
Yep. Filthy Animal says Jake Ferguson or Dalton Schultz. Yeah, I don't think this one is particularly close. I mean, Dalton Schultz could lose routes, targets to Cade Stover here in this game. And meanwhile, Jake Ferguson is, I think, pretty clearly their third best option in the pass game. As much as I think Cavante Turpin is a big time player, Jake Ferguson is their third option in the pass game. I would go with him. Teltec78 says Dak Prescott, JJ McCarthy, or Trevor Lawrence for week 1. So I was higher than market on Trevor Lawrence for much of the offseason here. You got Liam Cohen, you add Travis Hunter, you start to see ways that that Trevor Lawrence can actually break out. So I'm tempted to start him here. That said, the Dak spot might be too much to start Lawrence over. What do you think there, Leone? Dak, McCarthy, or T-Law?
Yeah, I think Dak probably has the widest range of outcomes here, but we do have Lawrence projecting the best right now. I mentioned earlier in a question between Kyler and Dak the discrepancy in team total, and Jacksonville actually has one of the higher team totals on the slate at 25. Dak and the Cowboys have one of the lowest team totals on the slate at sub 20 due to the matchup, and we're really looking at touchdowns for quarterback upside on a weekly basis. So I'll lean towards Lawrence here.
Yes.
We've seen this with Dallas before. Sometimes when they get behind in these scripts, it either goes really, really well or really, really poorly.
Yeah.
I've been on both sides of that.
Yeah, Eagles are not going to take their foot off the gas against the Cowboys. That is not what they do. They hate the Cowboys. The fans hate the Cowboys. Like they are going to keep rushing the passer, blitzing, playing their starters, even if they get all over the Cowboys tonight. So I'm a little worried about the Cowboys garbage time stuff there tonight. Last question we have here is from Bryoner. He says, what should I expect from DK this year? I presume he's referring to DK Metcalf. The good news for DK Metcalf is he has like no target competition whatsoever. I mean, we're expecting Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson to be their wide receiver too. They have a ton of tight ends they're going to use. So you could see DK Metcalf get 25, 30, 32% of the targets from Aaron Rodgers. How much is that worth? I don't know. I also don't think that the way DK Metcalf plays is a great fit with the way Aaron Rodgers likes to play typically. So I've been a little bit lower than market on DK Metcalf for this whole summer. What do you think about him this week, this season, Leone?
Yeah, I think because his name recognition is so high, he was a little overvalued in season-long fantasy drafts. Not to say that I expect him to be a bust, but just some concerns on the upside with the total pass volume. Am somewhat hopeful that, given his size and when Aaron Rodgers is done with some other receivers by the goal line, that maybe the touchdown upside will be there for Metcalf. It's not a great spot week one, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a pretty slow paced game against the Jets, who have a pretty solid defense. We could see a ton of rushing volume, a low play count from both teams. So, again, you're really dependent for Metcalf getting up to that 30% target share you mentioned. I think he can do it, but yeah, it's not, the most exciting of plays week one.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped calling Sauce Gardner Sauce last year because he was so bad. I was calling him Ahmed, but I'm gonna give him a chance here for this year. I'm gonna start off by calling him Sauce. We'll see what happens when he faces off with DK Metcalf on Sunday. All right, it's great to be back. Let's recap our list here of week one breakout candidates. First up, I know there's a lot of worry about Travis Hunter. How much cornerback will he play? I think his primary role on Sunday will indeed be as a wide receiver, particularly in a slot. Really good matchup against the Panthers. That's our number 7 breakout there, Travis Hunter. Number 6, Kenneth Walker gets the home game against a very young 49ers defense, starting rookies all over the place. Had that foot maintenance, did Kenneth Walker, but then he's going to be fine. Number 5, Emeka Egbuka. Could not dream up a better spot for your first NFL start. Godwin's out. McMillan's out. You have Baker, who's been a bit of a wide receiver kingmaker, throwing you the ball, and you get to face the Falcons. And so, huge role opportunity right away for Mecca Egbuka. Same thing with number 4, Teteroa McMillan, who is going to be the alpha. You don't take a guy in the top 10 at wide receiver if he's not going to be your alpha right away. He gets to face the Jaguars in what could be a very high scoring game there. Also benefited from Adam Thielen getting traded, Jalen Coker getting hurt. David Njoku in a comeback script, most likely against the Bengals as one of their most talented players with Joe Flacco at quarterback. You want to start your Browns in this spot if you have Browns. Xavier Worthy making his 2025 debut without Rashee Rice in the lineup, expecting him to be the primary target for Patrick Mahomes on Friday night. And number 1, James Conner, the elder running back, want to start him now, expecting him to handle the vast majority of of running back touches ahead of Trey Benson. Getting to play the Saints is certainly a bonus. All right. It's great to be back. Enjoy the football tonight between the Eagles and Cowboys. If you're serious about fantasy football, DFS, anything else, head to establishtheRun.com. And be sure you're following us on Twitter at Adam Levitan, at 2hats1mike. For Leone, producer Ryan, for everyone behind the scenes of Bleacher Report and ETR, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.